He took out multiple bombs of different shapes and sizes out of his tool bag and stuck them onto the walls along the way. Since he was trying to get attention, he might as well made it big. Boom. Sounds of explosions came one after another, followed by heat waves that spread out all over the place. The whole headquarters were shaking. Although the actual damage was not much because of the previous work, the tremors could still be felt throughout. Even without the security cameras, one could tell where Han Zhao was just by following the explosions. A large number of troops changed course and were heading straight for him. After turning a corner, he saw that the path ahead was jam-packed with soldiers. Zero, do you still remember me? No, one said through gritted teeth, his tone full of hatred. You killed me. I became this monster, all to get the power to crush you like a gnat. I will break your limbs just like you did to me. He could not wait to exact vengeance to his rival. At the last moment, Han Zhao turned and sidestepped the attack. He then reached out, grabbed No. 1 second exoskeleton, picked him off the ground, and started swaying around him. No. 1 instantly lost any feeling in his right arm, and the upper right portion of the exoskeleton started to fall apart until eventually everything broke off with gear parts flying all over the place, looking like a mechanical power that bloomed. The design of these superhuman soldiers' exoskeleton suits was extremely similar to his lightweight mechanical arm. Han Zhao had also just learned Neuralink not too long ago, and as a magnetic ring mechanic, he could easily assemble or disassemble such equipment at will. So, in a way, superhuman soldiers posed the least threat to Han Zhao. He could easily reduce them down to bare naked bodies. Have we met? Han Zhao asked confusedly. How could you not know me? No. One was furious. And your rival? What rival? He must be delusional. Who on earth is this metalhead? The Germinal forces faced no opposition as they rushed to get to the floor that Zero was on. However, no one was to be found. After she finished her precautionary measures, Hila opened the door to the passageway and entered while carrying her sister. It was a pitch-dark and narrow tunnel, and one could only move forward by crouching. Once she closed the door, all the noise from outside suddenly disappeared. Hila could finally take a deep breath and relax. Now that they were in the tunnel, the escape plan could be considered almost successful. As her bag was wriggling around, Hila unzipped it and Aurora's tiny head popped out. Have we escaped? Aurora asked as she looked around curiously. Almost, Hila replied as she lovingly touched Aurora's head. Where's Uncle Zero? We will wait for 5 more minutes. He should be here soon, Hila said after a pause. Aurora cocked her head and asked again, Sis, Uncle Zero seems really strong, right? He's alright. Hila did not want to give a clear answer. Sis, why did he come save me? How would I know? Even as Hila said that, her hands subconsciously reached for the photo in her pocket. She remembered that Zero had once seen this photo back in his training base. It could not be. But back then, Zero did not even have time to protect himself, so why would he remember this inconsequential thing? Even to the extent of carrying out this huge rescue plan. Unless he really did have the capability to see the future. Hila shook her head. She still could not figure out his motives. All she could feel was fear and respect to this mysterious figure, who single-handedly devastated the behemoth that was the Germinal organization. To think that he had once been that weak little trainee back in the base but had now risen to such heights in such short amount of time. She could only sigh at this. The world truly worked in mysterious ways. Sis, Uncle Zero, stop mentioning him. Hila got a little bit annoyed. Although he did save her sister, for some reason, she felt some sort of unexplainable familiarity with this Zero. It was as if she had met him somewhere else after he escaped from the base. However, that should not have been possible. But sis, you usually spoke so highly of him and even praised him whenever you told me stories about him. Aurora felt wronged. Nonsense, Hila said as she gently pinched Aurora's cheeks. At this moment, a third, odd-sounding voice spoke out in the cramped and lightless tunnel. Did I hear that right? You are praising me. Hila turned in an instant and was just about to send out her powers before a powerful force squeezed her hands and brutally pushed her against the tunnel wall. Why are you here? Hila was shocked. Han Zhao let of his hands before laughing lightly. And everywhere. Hila relaxed and called back her powers while making a face. She remembered clearly that the tunnel door was opened and closed only once. How did Han Zhao manage to get in? Did he go through the walls? When he took the initiative to propose splitting up, he had already made a simple but effective plan in his mind. Of course, he would not gamble on Hila telling him the real position, so he had then been left with 2 choices. The first was to leave Simple Tracker on Aurora's bag, while the second was a character card that had never used. The Dion card obtained on the Western continent had a special stealth ability. Although he was very strong, he was not willing to be encircled and ganged up on for no reason. His main goal was to get out of the Germinal headquarters. So, after he taught No. 1 who was boss, Han Zhao went and blasted all the cameras at the intersection, giving Germinal the idea that he was in the area before he activated Dion's character card and backtracked along the original way. Regardless of the truth of her words, she must have been headed to the real passageway. The character card's ability name was You Can't See Me. As the name suggested, Han Zhao simply waltzed along the way without anyone taking notice of him. The enemies were then all baited to the intersection where Han Zhao had been without knowing where he had disappeared to. Han Zhao simply followed Hila and jumped into the tunnel together with her. What surprised the great technician Han, however, was that Hila had actually given him the correct directions. Both the room number and the floor tile location were correct. To be honest, when they were about to split up, Hila's fishy look had made him almost think that he was going to be sold out. But the result was unexpected. In truth, Hila had also struggled with this, but she had finally decided to give Han Zhao the right information. Han Zhao did save Aurora, and if she had lied to him, she would not know how to face her sister. Although a part of her kept tempting her otherwise, she finally abandoned such thoughts and told him the truth. Compared to Goddess of Death in Han Zhao's past, this Hila had not been consumed by darkness, and her heart was still illuminated by the stars and moon that was Aurora. On another side, tens of thousands of Germinal troops had gathered and were searching for Han Zhao around the area where he disappeared. Reporting to leader, target was not found. One by one the executives brought in the same results. The leader was furious, and he held his hands so tight that his gloves started to rip. This is where the cameras last caught him. How could we not find him? The camera records in the A4 area seemed to have been modified. Security measures had been shut down, the guards have been killed, and the little girl had been taken away. In that moment, the string of information from Aurora's disappearance, the destroyed cameras, and Hila's absence in the previous battles to stop Zero started to make sense. They had been fooled. Hila, you traitor. The leader suddenly realized what had happened and was so enraged that the sound of his teeth gnashing together was like steel grinding against each other. Get man to search for Hila now. She escaped with Zero. The soldiers around were startled into action. Someone finally brought the dazed Cyberloss to the leader, and with a slap, Cyberloss was awoken with a shock. Seeing the leader's face that was full of hostility right after waking made Cyberloss tense up. Tell me everything you know, the leader said coldly. Cyberloss did not dare keep anything to himself and told the whole story from when he had been taken hostage until he was knocked unconscious. He took the organization's classified information, kidnapped Aurora. Cyberloss tried to be as careful. He might be an inhuman. The leader felt his body sway when he heard that. If Zero really was an undying inhuman, then Germinal faced certain defeat. After taking a deep breath, the leader said decidedly, that's only a guess. I will just have to kill him first and see if he really is an inhuman. Cyberloss was then taken away. Seeing as the man had done a lot for the organization in terms of research, the leader decided to spare his life. Cyberloss had never been hired for his loyalty anyway. Widen the search net. Even if that Zero can get out of headquarters, I won't let him get off the continent, the leader said calmly. This was an early stage of the underground tunnel. After they built the headquarters, people left it without any maintenance. I dug a path from the air ventilation pipes which lead to this place. All the cameras and gates are gone, and the railroads are broken, too. We need to walk out of here. The exit a hidden door that is located at the fringe of the headquarters, and it will take around 4 hours for us to reach there. Han Zhao looked back at the hole and said, won't they be able to catch up? Nobody knows we are here, but we still have to be on alert. Hila carried Aurora on her back and started walking forward. Han Zhao quickly followed and walked right next to Hila. He occasionally dropped a few small landmines to blow up the tunnel in case anyone came later. 3 of them continued to march forward in silence. Just now, the situation had been intense, so there were a lot of things that they were still unclear of. Now that they had the time, Hila seemed to be more confused as she kept recalling what had happened. She kept on turning her head toward Han Zhao. Hila had a few questions to ask, but because of her cold personality, she pursed her lips and kept on walking. What are you looking at, you little brat? Han Zhao raised his eyebrows. Aurora quietly replied, do you not have a name? Or is your name just Zero? Paying attention, Hila's ears perked up. Han Zhao, that's my name. My sister said you were brainwashed. She couldn't figure out how you escaped. Han Zhao stroked his chin and said, everything has its own destiny. Hila rolled her eyes. My sister said you are only 20 years old. But why do you look so old? Han Zhao's face darkened. Didn't I already change my appearance? This brat doesn't appreciate beauty at all. Then Hanzio looked at Hila and realized that she was being oddly quiet. Hanzio started to tease her interested and smiled. So, do you have anything that you want to say to me? Hila pushed Aurora higher up on her back and coldly replied, thanks. You don't sound like you mean it at all. Hanzio started to flip the bullets in his hands. Don't forget that I came a long way to save your sister. There's no need for you to kneel on the ground to show your gratitude. But at least be more polite, will you? Hila turned her head around and frowned. How did you know about my sister? What are you trying to do? Hila could not believe that Hanzio really came here to save her sister, and she thought that he must have an ulterior motive. Although Hila was right, she could never guess that Hanzio's target was her. You sound like you are trying to interrogate me even though I am your savior and your teammate. Hanzio raised his eyebrow. Do you think I'm like the Germinal organization, trying to use your sister to control you? Hanzio yawned. I might try if I want to. There was no way that he could do what he said. Hila relaxed for a bit and replied, so, what do you want? I want world peace. Hila ground her teeth in frustration. Hanzio had just been playing with her all this time, and she did not get anything useful out of him. Hila shut her mouth again. Sister told me some stories about you, and she said you were very talented. Aurora then curiously asked, are those stories real? Oh, Hila actually complimented me behind my back. Hanzio looked over and Hila did not even flinch. Her face was still as cold as ice while looking straight ahead, ignoring Hanzio. Well, there's a saying that if you don't say anything, then you agree to whatever that's happening. Of course, it's all real. Then what happened after you escaped? Aurora was really interested into Hanzio's story. During her time of imprisonment, when she and her sister meet up, her sister would always tell Aurora about the stories of the world outside. The stories of Zero had left the deepest impression on her. After 3 hours of silence, they reached a part where the tunnel was blocked, and the exit was right above their head. Hanzio and Hila stepped on the shattered rocks. Hila's hand swept over the ceiling, and she found the lever. After she flipped the lever, cracks suddenly appeared and formed a square, and dust started to fall from above of them. Get up. Hila pushed open the hidden door and jumped into the room. The room was pitch black without any sound. After the eyes had adjusted to the darkness, they could see that they were in a large storage room. Tons of boxes and containers were lined up, and there was another exit at the corner of the storage room that was covered in dust. They don't have anything important in this warehouse, so there shouldn't be a lot of security here. Toward the south is the secured part of the headquarters. As long as we can get out of the secured zone, then we will be safe. Hanzio remained silent. Suddenly, the interface popped up with a message. Your landmine successfully killed the soldiers of Germinal organization. You gain 1 experience. The landmines in the tunnel just exploded. It won't be long before the Germinal organization catch up, Hanzio said. Hila's face briefly let slip a stunned expression. We need to pick up our pace. It was night and the sky was dark. They woke Aurora up and put her into the bag. Then the two of them quickly left the warehouse, sneaked under the patrol of the soldiers, and head toward the exit. A number of troops started to show up and settle down in the area around the headquarters. The security level was also increased by a few levels. A few hours ago, Hanzio and Hila had disappeared in the headquarters. The leader called for the highest level of order to employ all the standby troop to catch Hanzio. He knew that Hanzio must still be in the headquarters surroundings, so he reinforced the security at the borders and would not let anyone pass. The leader of southern troops quickly changed from a normal leader to Executive Officer Kedor, who was LV-55. To target the powerful growth that Hanzio had, the leader also employed the veterans and executive officers. There were more than 10 executive officers, a dozen super soldiers, a few hundred Inhumans, and a few thousands common soldiers that followed after Kedor. How about Hila and her sister? They betrayed the organization. If they resist, kill them all. The leader's voice was deep. Zero was the #1 enemy. Even sacrificing Aurora would be worth it. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the moon and the stars were nowhere to be seen. The ground base was brightly lit, and columns of light tore through the surrounding darkness. The guards were searching everywhere for something, and armored vehicles rolled past one after another with their loud engines blaring through the still night. This is bad. They have drastically increased the personnel on the ground, and it's impossible to pass without drawing their attention. Once we're found, they will kill us all, Hila said with a heavy voice. The organization's forces seemed to be endless. Although they were being defeated at every turn by the Six Nations combined army, it was still a force to be reckoned with. On the other hand, they were but 2 people, and trying to force their way out would be possible. They should consider some other ways to stealthily sneak away. Germinal won't stop looking for us. Even if we somehow break out of this encirclement, there will still be countless pursuers after us. I'll just see. Han Zhao did not really care about it and went back to preparing his equipment. Hila frowned. If help was not coming, then what was the point of following Han Zhao? The one Germinal wanted was him, and her sister would be safer if they were to split up. She thought that since she had already helped him leave the headquarters, she had already returned the favor. So, it would not be immoral to suggest to split up. For Aurora, Hila was willing to do anything. The enemies are too many. Even if we take out several hundred, we will still eventually fall to their human wave tactic. Only death awaits us if we charge in like that. Let's look for an opening. However, Han Zhao seemed to have already made up his mind and said confidently, "Make sure you keep up." Hila was going to question where that confidence came from when she heard some sort of machinery activating behind her. She turned around and was shocked by what she saw. Han Zhao's appearance was completely different. She was now looking at a streamlined suit of jet black mechanical armor with faint blue lights glowing through the gaps of the suit. This breathtaking scene brought about an abrupt realization. This figure, this suit, there was no doubt. It was way too famous. The whole Germinal, no, the whole world knew him. Black Phantom. Hila could no longer hold her calm and had a look of disbelief on her face. At that moment, she realized what had happened. No wonder how Han Zhao could infiltrate the Germinal headquarters alone without any sort of backup. He was someone who stood at the top. A one-man army. So, this is the truth. Thinking back on the news that she had read about Black Phantom, Han Zhao's life these past few years was far from that of a runaway fugitive. He was always right in front of everyone, including Germinal, showing off his powers and making a legend of himself, one step at a time. Hila had witnessed Han Zhao at his weakest, and she never thought that he would one day stand at the top and far surpass her. Hila was lost for words. Han Zhao gently patted the still shocked Hila and made large strides toward the troops in the south as he exuded a sort of confidence exclusive to the powerful. When everyone saw this figure, they took a while to react. Why is Black Phantom here? Kador was confused. Once they looked past Han Zhao, they finally saw Hila. This was when shock, realization, and fear suddenly went through the minds of all present. Zero is Black Phantom. When the truth finally revealed itself, everyone was stunned and could not do anything but stare. Kador, the field commander, had also lost his wits and forgot to order his men to attack. All those who had opposed Black Phantom had ended up as corpses. This name instilled fear in all those who heard it. Attack! Attack, now! Kador finally reacted and roared his commands. His men were startled into action and started to lock the machine guns onto Han Zhao. Yet, right before they could open fire, a huge boom sounded as Han Zhao exploded off the ground and sent dirt flying everywhere like an artillery shell had hit where he was standing. Han Zhao launched away and flew right into the enemy formation. One after another, the Germinal soldiers were sent into the air. At that moment, chaos fell upon the battlefield. Han Zhao tore through the enemy formations like a hot knife through butter. There was a constant stream of clinking noises as the bullets that were shot at him got reflected by his high-level armor. He kicked away a Germinal soldier, stole his machine gun, and opened fire at the others around him as the gun was surrounded by a faint blue light that greatly boosted its power and rate of fire. The barrage of shots was also triggering the effects of lethal shot one after another. Kill confirmation messages flooded through his interface as the Germinal soldiers fell in swaths. The nearby troops quickly filled in the gaps and tried to surround Han Zhao. A dozen or so grenade launchers were fired and drew parabolas across the battlefield toward Han Zhao. Yet, before the shots even reached him, Han Zhao stepped to the side, leaped into the air, and took off with the reaction force from the blasts. Boom! All kinds of tanks and artilleries fired at Han Zhao, and explosions roared through the night as the smell of gunpowder permeated the battlefield. It was as if a small-scale war was being waged against Germinal, but Han Zhao was their only opponent. Viper's upgrades along with his skills and talents made Han Zhao unstoppable as he ran straight through explosions. Not even the heavily armored vehicles were spared from his rampage. A few unlucky tanks got flattened to the ground after being run over by Han Zhao. It was a complete massacre, and soon the Germinal forces were breaking apart. Whoosh! 2 attack helicopters rushed to the scene and immediately opened fire on Han Zhao, and a stream of high-caliber bullets trailed after him. Han Zhao's eye flashed, and in a split second, he calculated the helicopter's speed and flight path with his helmet interface, retrieved the Ghost sniper rifle from his back, and took a shot. It was as if he did not even have to aim. The electromagnetic projectile zoomed past the battlefield before it went clean through the helicopter and flew off into the night sky. The pilot was killed instantly, and the helicopter spiraled out of control and crashed into the hillside below. It kept on rolling until it eventually destroyed the fence in its way, and tore through dozens of German soldiers before crashing into and collapsing a defensive structure, causing dust to fill the air. The helicopter had cleared a bloody path through the swarms of soldiers. One of the rotor blades broke off and flew through the air, and landed right in front of a group of stunned players. They were already flabbergasted since the moment it was revealed the Han Zhao was Black Phantom. The source of all these legendary achievements was the same person, so he was basically the main protagonist on their planet. The quick ones immediately turned on the camera function and started streaming the event to the world. Wait a second, if he's Black Phantom, a -30 reputation with Black Phantom, how long will it take to even reset it back to 0? The Germinal players felt like their hearts were crushed. We haven't even enjoyed Black Phantom's benefits, yet we just lost all our hope after waiting for so long. The players present looked frozen ducks, all color drained from their faces. Screw you Germinal, give me back my youth. When Han Zhao saw this, the corner of his mouth perked up. This group of players was essential in his plan. They played the role of the reporter and were responsible for spreading tonight's events out far and wide. The big reveal of his double identity would surely rock the player community and become a hot topic for the time to come. Currently, there were not very many NPCs that had made a deep impression on the players, so making big news himself would be the best way of ensuring his spot in the community. Kill him. Suddenly, a powerful force approached as Kedor roared and led a group of executives straight for Han Zhao. Boom! A condensed wave of energy exploded out of his fist and crashed into the group approaching him like a tsunami. Like bowling pins, the executives were all knocked away. This attack was just like the shockwave blast used by pugilists, and Kedor's group was instantly broken out of formation. Using this chance, Han Zhao locked onto the person with the strongest life force, Kedor, and rushed him. The disoriented Kedor did not even have time to dodge before he was tackled to the ground. Viper's muscle fibers pulsed and bulged, and attacks with the thermo-electrical incisor gloves with +80 strength landed on Kedor's body one after another. Blood spurted out everywhere. After a dozen or so hits, Kedor, with his face was full of blood, was furious. He released his energy and pushed Han Zhao high into the air. Han Zhao pulled out the Ghost Sniper rifle mid-flight and activated Burning Will. The rifle's muzzle that started to glow was giving Kedor all sorts of warning signals and made all his hair stand on end. The shot dealt explosive damage and instantly emptied Kedor's remaining health bar. The shot left a faint trail of blue light in the air before it left a hole between Kedor's eyebrows and a shocked expression on his face. You have killed Kedor. You have earned 142,000 experience. You have earned 25 trial points. Level 55 enemies actually drop so many trial points. Han Zhao was overjoyed. For the half-minute or so after eliminating the strongest Germinal member in the area, it was as if Han Zhao turned on his grass cutter mode. He just mowed through the rest of the enemy forces. Like a human bomb, he obliterated anyone who stood in his way. A C-class superhuman was enough to go against armies on their own. Only by demonstrating overwhelming strength could he rise up in popularity and fame. Han Zhao cleared out a large patch of ground, and it was as if there was a hole in the middle of the Germinal base. He really went and rushed them. Hila was shocked, but she still did not forget Han Zhao's instructions and followed behind, carrying Aurora. After stealing and boarding an armored SUV, Han Zhao smashed his foot onto the gas, and Trio drove off into the night after smashing past the roadblocks. The players received mission failure notifications, yet no one cared anymore. They were still trying to process the fact that Black Phantom was 0. The control room back in headquarters was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone had witnessed the chaos from the screens. The leader's chest rose and fell rapidly, and even though he was putting on a poker face, everyone present knew that he was enraged. I kept sending people to search for him, yet I never thought that he never tried to hide. The leader felt a suffocating feeling and felt like he had been played like a fool. His assistant to the side asked where Elite do. We chase. We chase. Summon back all the executives still out on the field, the organization's strongest military force, and all the reserve forces. Lock down all areas and kill on sight. Short-range missiles are authorized. The car stopped abruptly and caused rocks and dust to fly everywhere around it. Switch, you drive. I need to give the car some anti-radar modifications. I have no wish to be blown up into the air by missiles. Hila closed her eyes and took a deep breath before she got out of the car and supported herself with the side of the car to suppress the nauseous feeling welling up in her stomach. Although it was almost unbearable, she had to admit that under their previous peril, Han Zio's driving had made her feel safe enough. Aurora, on the other hand, was fast asleep in the backseat and was completely unbothered. Han Zio saw this, scoffed, and said, "Your sister will definitely get further in life than you." Hila did not even bother with replying and got into the driver's seat. "We're still in Germinal territory, so we shouldn't take the large roads. However, driving through the wilderness will take 8 to 9 days before we can get to safety. Not to mention the Germinal troops that must have been sent to pursue us. They will bring planes, armored vehicles, and even missiles. You can just follow the map and take whichever route you think is safer. You're more familiar with the area." After all, Han Zio replied without even turning. Now that Germinal knew about his face-changing capability, they would definitely kill all those suspicious. Escaping would not be easy. Our fuel can only last another 8 hours, and we're completely out of food and water. Moreover, we are also running low on ammunition. We need to find somewhere to resupply soon, or things won't be looking good, said Hila. "We don't need to look for supplies," Han Zio replied calmly. "The enemies will just bring it to our doorsteps themselves. I'm a mechanic. It won't matter if we run out of equipment to use, as I can just make more." Hila did not have a response to that. By now, she had long since thrown away the thought of splitting up with Han Zio to escape. It was much safer for her sister and her to stay with him. Han Zio tried to think of his next steps in silence as he made the modifications on the car. An hour later, the Six Nations picked up the movement of the Germinal organization. Without any intel, they had to prepare for possible attacks, so they increased their security and defense order to prevent any tactics of the Germinal organization. Then, on the same night, the Six Nations conducted an emergency meeting to analyze the current battle and try to understand the reason behind the military movement of the Germinal organization. After half an hour of intense discussion, from the evidence that they had, they finally came to the conclusion that baffled their minds. Who are they trying to hunt down? The Six Nations had already pushed their military right in front of the base of the Germinal organization, and they still had the time to waste their resources to hunt down someone. That man had to be very special. "Everyone please wait, my troops just received important information. The man who is being hunted down contacted my communication division. Please allow me to pass on his message to the main channel." Everyone was surprised. The monitor blinked, and Han Zio's face started to surface. He used his original appearance, and the commanders quickly recognized that he was Zero, one of the most wanted men of the Germinal organization. The man who kept on providing intel to the Six Nations appeared right in front of their eyes. The commanders around the table were shocked. "Are you the one being hunted down by the Germinal organization? Why are you in the territory of the Germinal organization?" "I infiltrated the headquarters and retrieved key information from the mainframe of the system," Han Zio replied. "All their information on their troops, strategies, and missile distribution are now in my hands. Send out your troops, interfere with the enemy troops, and ensure my safety. Once I am safe, the intel will be yours." Han Zio prepared to use the intel as a bargaining chip for an exchange of the Six Nations' assistance. The intel was originally going to be sent to the Six Nations, and now they would have to fight for this information. In the beginning, Han Zio's plan had been to steal the intel and get out without getting found out. However, Destiny's Child's foresight had allowed the leader to set ambush, which disrupted Han Zio's plan. So, he could only adjust accordingly. Han Zio did not anticipate the appearance of Destiny's Child, but he was not frustrated since not everything would always go according to plan. He was not afraid of accidents as long as he could adapt to the new situations. An officer said coldly, "You can't prove that you have the intel unless you tell us right now. If you do so, we will consider protecting you. This intel can burn the Germinal organization down to the ground, and this is essential for victory of the battle," Han Zio replied. "If you do not accept my terms, this intel will be buried with my dead body. No, not only me, but all of your soldiers will die too. If the Germinal organization admits defeat, they might trigger all their nuclear weapons and wipe out everyone. And then, you will question yourself, why didn't you simply accept my offer?" The commanders were anxious as Han Zio pointed out their main concern. They did not know the quantity or the location of the nuclear bombs that the Germinal organization had. If they could get information on this matter, then they could send out all the agents, elites, and strong soldiers to eliminate this greatest threat. "How can we trust you? To show my gratitude, I just send out the first documents on the Hands of Death system to Stardragon's troops. I used to work for Stardragon's communication agency, and Stardragon can testify." Stardragon was pushed to the front of attention. Everyone looked over at Gu Hui, and Gu Hui looked dismal. With an annoyed expression, he nodded, which meant that it did happen. The Germinal organization has a strong security system in place. Even our most elite agents could not infiltrate the headquarters. How did you get through? Another officer asked. Han Zhao tapped his cheek, and his appearance slowly changed. After looking at his face, the commanders of the Six Nations all stood up with chairs rolling away. Everyone froze. This is the face of the Black Phantom. Are you? Du Hui, who almost fell, stammered with disbelief. Black Phantom. Han Zhao adjusted the image and showed the viper next to his body. Zero. Black Phantom, they are both identities of mine. You can call me Han Zhao. Du Hui's breath quickened. Division 13 did try to send people to track down Zero. The targets were all the homeless migrants, as they thought that Zero could only hide around such groups of people. As it turned out, they had searched in the wrong direction. Han Zhao had never tried to hide, but instead, he had become the legendary killer in the darknet. We accept the deal. We will send our troops to face them head-on. Natural satellite security and anti-missile device will be activated, so there will be no way the Germinal organization and land a missile on the ground. The escort troops might take a while. We do not have any permission in air, so the Air Force might not be able to directly escort you away from the battle. After we finish discussing, we will tell you the extraction point. Han Zhao smiled. Okay. After he turned off the communication device, Han Zhao let out a long sigh. The negotiation was successful, and the troops of the Six Nations would push forward on the side and intervene with the Germinal troops. This was the biggest ally that Han Zhao could get. At this point, there was no need for Han Zhao to wear his mask. The cool wind blew on his cheeks. He closed his eyes as if tasting the feeling of freedom. He could finally take off his mask after wearing it for more than 6 months. With their help, we are now in safe hands. Don't let your guard down. Even if we have allies, we have to make it until they can find us. Han Zhao did not think twice before killing Gila's enthusiasm. Without any reinforced policies and restrictions, the Wanderers eagerly joined the Darknet, and all the money and resources Bennett had poured in finally came into use. He felt like he was Buddha, alleviating all the suffering around the world. The futility of war. On the top floor of Sanctuary 1, Bennett stood next to the window as his sharp pupils reflected the entire field of Sanctuary 1. The mist of war surrounded the tower, and everyone on the planet Aquamarine worried about their future. There are unusual movement in the battlefield. Please take a look at this. The assistant rushed into the room and handed over the laptop. As the largest intelligence network on planet Aquamarine, the Darknet had kept up to date with the situation on the battlefield. The Germinal organization, who was on the defensive side, employed a large-scale search around the headquarters. At the same time, the Six Nations applied pressure to the Germinal organization from south and east sides. Moreover, they sent out multiple troops to infiltrate the Germinal organization's territory. From the movement of both sides, it seems that they are all going after the same target. It is reported that the target is the most wanted traitor of the Germinal organization, Zero, who infiltrated the mainframe and obtained a large amount of classified information. Bennett stopped reading and sighed. Zero, I know this man. The reason that the Germinal organization has fallen to the point today is mostly because of this man. Bennett then flipped on to the next page. In addition, Zero called himself Han Zhao, and he had a mask that can change his appearance in an instant. Black Phantom is one of his identities. Bennett could not say a word. Bang! The laptop arced through the sky and smashed onto the ground. The laptop was utterly destroyed with parts rolling on the ground. The origin of Black Phantom had always been a mystery, as if his existence was created out of thin air. Bennett did try to ask Han Zhao about his history. At that time, Han Zhao's tone had been reflective and dense. Every man has a past that they do not want to face, just like hands you bathe in blood. And that's true for me. I have made a lot of mistakes. I used to wear a mask, and I never knew who I truly was. It's only recently that I've finally seen my true identity. Of course, you do not know me. Bennett had believed him at that time. From his own experience, he had suddenly reached the conclusion that Han Zhao was a man with strong internal struggles, a man who sought self-redemption. Bennett had thought that he suddenly had a common topic that they could talk about. Well, right now, Bennett was disappointed at how brainless he was. How dare you trick me? Wai Yalan and her team charged into the commander's room. Haha, he really was Black Phantom. I was right after all. Wai Yalan laughed out loud, and her laugh was similar to a ringing bell. She slapped Lin Yao on the back, and he almost fell over. In the Battle of Tedramira River, Wai Yalan did recognize Han Zhao. At that time, everyone in the team had guessed about the identity of Han Zhao. Jiang Wei had reported this to the higher officials, yet the officials did not give any response except to tell them not to further inquire on this topic. Everyone was suddenly enlightened and connected all the dots together. That is why the higher officials wanted to hide his identity. He was wanted by the Germinal organization. Now we know why no one can catch Zero. He can actually change his appearance. Now we know. On the side, Hu Yu face froze. He had heard a lot about this old team member, but to think he was actually such a great figure. Lai Yalan suddenly was aware of the danger that Han Zhao was in. She asked about the situation. The commander replied, other than the military operation, the officials have also formed an escort team to enter the battlefield and extract Han Zhao from the Germinal organization's territory. Zhang Wei walked up and asked, can we join the escort team? Commander shook his head. You are nowhere near standard of the team. As the news spread further and further away from the center of the battle, for those who had no dedicated channel to receive intel such as the Wanderer warlords, they were the last ones to receive the news. Illumina was one of them. Let him in. Xiao Jin frowned and put down his glass of wine. Since I became the leader, he has not visited me once. Something must be wrong. As soon as the door opened, Todd saw Sikai and acted like he was not there. He also took out a plan book, and just like Sikai, he wanted to discuss the plan and submit power to the Xiao faction. Since the two largest powers had submit to Xiao faction, they had the proper power to control Illumina. What was going on? Todd saw Xiao Jin's confused expression and laughed. It seems that chief of the Xiao faction has not received the news. Take a look at this. He pushed a document across the table, and it was the intel on the true identity of Han Zhao. As the home faction, he had a larger information network and was the first to receive the information. No wonder Black Phantom came to visit Illumina and supported the Xiao faction at critical times. He was clearly trying to protect his family. The identities of Zero and Black Phantom were one, and he was the crucial figure in this battle. One could easily see that once the war ended, he would have immense influence over the world. This legend had come from one of the Wanderer warlord organization, and it was the Xiao faction. Connecting Black Phantom's action of protecting his family, every organizations in Illumina could not sit still. They could no longer ignore the Xiao faction after this incident, and the Xiao faction could be one of the most powerful organizations that they could rely on. Therefore, everyone came to submit power, and Xiao Jin was the last one to know what had happened. Xiao Hai could never believe that his brother, who did not have any achievements, could become such a powerful figure today. His brother was a man who could change the tide of war and the shape of the world. Yet, Xiao Hai was still only obsessed with powers in a small warlord organization. When one glanced down on the battlefield from the sky, the wilderness was full of sand and dust. A ferocious jeep with sharp armor zoomed across the wilderness. Around a kilometer behind the jeep was the Germinal organization's vehicles trying to catch up. They didn't send enough people again. Yes, we will get some free spare parts to use. Hila, who was on the driver's seats, gave Han Zhao a cold stare. She was too busy and exhausted to say anything. At this point, the appearances of the two people were in a stark contrast with each other. After fleeing from the enemy for 4 days, the enemies were everywhere, and they faced difficult battles every single day. Hila was not a mechanic who could build equipment and machinery to fight. Her power came from her psychic abilities, which required energy and strength. Every battle that she fought was tough and challenging, and at this point of the escape, she had already exhausted all her power, and her face was covered in sweat and dust with dark lines around her eyes. On the other hand, Han Zhao was completely different. Using Viper, fighting off the enemy was a breeze for him. Most of the enemies who chased Han Zhao were weak and easily defeated anyway. However, Hila could not fend off the enemy as easily as Han Zhao. While Hila was driving, her brain felt like it was going to shut down at any given point of time. Even though she was extremely tired, she did not want to hand over the steering wheel to Han Zhao. Hey sis, do you want some juice? Aurora, who was sitting at the back with big sparkling eyes, offered a plastic bag containing liquid. That is not juice. That is an energy drink that can help you stay awake and increase your energy, so don't. As Han Zhao looked back, he saw the empty bags on the back seat. He continued with a mildly infuriated voice. Drink too much, but it tastes good. Aurora hid her face behind the seat. When she was imprisoned, the food she had every single day had been nutrition cream without any taste. The energy drink was a new experience for her taste buds, and she was wide awake. Han Zhao looked at the rear mirror and said, "Turn the car around and kill them all." Hey, little brat, lie down on the back seat and don't stick your head out. Aurora listened obediently. Hila did not flinch. She grabbed an energy drink and chugged it in an instant. She spanned the steering wheel, and the jeep abruptly drifted around, leaving a trail of dust behind. In order to adapt to the long chasing battle, he had equipped multiple long-range weapons, such as a triple-barrel gun turret and the grenade launcher on his shoulder. He had additional magazines on his legs and on his back. All these weapons were made from the equipment of the enemy they fought before. They wanted to avoid head-on fights and delay Han Zhao for as long as possible while waiting for reinforcements. They knew that they did not have the power to stop Han Zhao. One armored truck was destroyed within a few seconds. The convoy began to return fire. They had stronger firepower compared to the side of Han Zhao, and bullets and missiles, with an orange trail in the air, were coming for Han Zhao from every direction. Han Zhao's technical interface analyzed the path of the light rockets for Han Zhao to shoot it down before they hit their target. As for machine gun bullets, they could only forcefully rely on the armor of the jeep to protect them. Boom. The sound of explosion continues. Han Zhao fought against multiple vehicles and dozens of soldiers at the same time, and the battle was in a stalemate. Suddenly, Han Zhao gave Hila the signal. Hila knew that it was her time to fight. Shockwave exploded in their hearts and souls. Everyone in the car suddenly spat out blood and was heavily injured. With the cooperation of the two people, the battle quickly reached to the end. The 4 executive officers were only around LV-30, but it gave Han Zhao 2 trial points. He realized that not only did enemies above LV-40 give out trial points, enemies with lower levels could also give out some. But the system would not show that if it is below 1 point. It would still add the accumulated points in the system. Current progress 723 2,700 or so points. I am progressing faster than I expected. Han Zhao started to disassemble the parts from the equipment that he had just gotten. Destroying was always easier than creating. The speed of Han Zhao taking parts away from equipment makes one's head dizzy. From my calculation, it seems that the enemy reinforcements will come between 7 and 12 minutes, Han Zhao said. So, we can only stay here for another 5 minutes. Can you still drive? If not, I will do it. I'm fine. Hila chugged another energy drink and boosted her energy level. Han Zhao quickly went through the spare parts that he had disassembled and took the ones that were useful. Then they drove off while having an anti-radar layer on top of them. In the car, Han Zhao was smoking and repairing his suit when he decided to check out the forums and saw the post made by the Germinal players that he had just killed. The forum posts made by Germinal basically gave Han Zhao free information on the enemy troop movements. Germinal was not aware of the existence of the forums, while there was no way the players could have known that an NPC could see their posts. Han Zhao's group kept escaping through the openings between their forces, and Germinal had no idea how the information was being leaked. Germinal could not have known that their own Inhumans were the ones dragging them down. All this did was further convince the Germinal leader of Han Zhao's power to predict the future. Many of the players had seen Han Zhao bringing a sister duo along with him when he broke out of Germinal's ambushes. Discussions about this suddenly exploded. Why would he bring 2 girls when running for his life? Is there any doubt? It must have been for love. Then, a player who had let his imagination break through the skies posted this story. I was once a test subject. I was tortured and went through endless unimaginable suffering in a hell-like place. She was my only source of light. Every time I saw her tall figure and ice-cold face, the pain I felt all over my body suddenly disappeared. Although I was only a test subject, and she never spared me so much as a smile, seeing the fury in her eyes taught me the warmth of spring. Maybe this is what it feels like when love finally arrives. So, I swore, when I one day escape this place, I will become stronger and rise to the top. When that day comes, I will stand in front of you and tell you with all my heart that I love you. When he saw this post, Han Zhao coughed all the energy drink that was in his mouth onto Hila. Which goddamn pervert wrote this? Where did this idiot jump out from? Don't you ever let me see you. I will kill you all the way back to level 1. This was only one of the versions that the players came up with. Another person wrote about how Han Zhao fell in love at first sight with the older sister and decided to elope with her while bringing along the little girl. Or how Han Zhao and the redhead were lovers to begin with, and the little girl was actually their secret child. Some even claimed that the sisters were already Han Zhao's women, but they were taken away by the evil Germinal leader. To take back what was his, Han Zhao had gone on the path of revenge, eventually causing this whole war for love. Basically, the people's imaginations were endless. Oh ho ho ho, I never thought that you were like this, Black Phantom. So, we're all the same. Oof, the little girl's the best. The older sister's where it's at. Just as Han Zhao was having a headache from all these stories, he found out that the players had given him 2 new nicknames. Black Phantom, the Womanizer. Technician Han, your knight in shining armor. Han Zhao was conflicted. Suddenly, a new post caught Han Zhao's attention. Everyone, look, I have received a new mission. It's a large-scale encirclement operation this time. Request for group members to carry me. A Germinal player posted his mission details, and the photo of the map that he attached showed a massive force that stood on what was supposedly Han Zio's current route of escape. This group of Germinal forces was unlike anything that they had ever seen. The encirclement forces are in place. It will take another 6 hours before they make contact with Han Zio. How many men do we have? The Germinal leader asked in a grave voice. Sir, we have mobilized a total of 80 high-ranking executives, 600 super soldiers, and several thousands of armored infantry troops. There are also over 300 tanks and 30 attack helicopters. I'm sorry, sir, but this was all we could muster. The 6 nations are currently applying pressure on all fronts, and we are stretched thin. Boom. The leader violently smacked the table and roared. If it weren't for those beastards from the 6 nations, this encirclement would have already been complete. Zero must have made a deal with them. We have already locked onto him 4 times, yet all our missiles have been intercepted by the 6 nations. Humph. Now that our forces are in place, the 6 nations will have to drive their troops right into the middle of my territory if they want to stop us from catching Zero. Order the troops to start closing in on him. Even if he can predict the future, he will still be forced to go head-to-head with our troops. Zero is very strong. Only the older executives can finish the job. How many of them went with the troops? The leader asked. 5 in total. Here are their files, the assistant quickly replied. The leader took a glance and nodded. These old folks could be considered the organization's strongest force. Even he would have to be careful against them in a fight. Their strength had already reached a certain level and would be enough to take on Han Zio. With 5 of them together, even the leader would take some time to come out on top. This time, the leader was confident that Han Zio would finally be taken care of, and he let out a vicious glint in his eyes. The night came, and 2 rays of light were moving around the plains. Han Zio and his companions got away from the chase from the troops. The plains were quiet, and they could only hear the low humming sound of the exhausted engine. Pull over, Han Zio suddenly said. Hila shook her head in disagreement. We just got away from the troops. If we stop now, they will soon catch up. We are heading into a trap. The path ahead has been closed off. There will be nowhere out. Han Zio shrugged. Hila jumped. What? How did you know? But she recalled hearing that Han Zio could predict the future, so she took back her question. Both of them had forced their way out of the headquarters, and after the eventful and stressful days, she trusted Han Zio with all her heart. She stopped the jeep, and silence took over the scene. If the Germinal organization has encircled the plains, they will for sure move inward and confine us in a smaller area. We now have 2 options. First, we fight our way through before they enclose their forces on us, or second, we wait for our opportunity. If we drag this out for too long, our area for movement would be smaller, and our chance of surviving will be even slimmer, Hila said hesitantly. Will we have a chance if we break through the encirclement? The trap they've set up this time is strong and secure. All the troops are close to each other, and there is no space or opportunity where we can sneak past them. Even if we head back the way we came, we still cannot escape. After Han Zio analyzed the situation, Hila remained quiet and tried to think for a new method. Even though Aurora could not understand what Han Zio had said, she could tell that the atmosphere was serious and dense. She then grabbed Hila's sleeve. Hila's serious face relaxed, and she patted Aurora on her head. It was not the end. Hila looked back and asked, Do you have any idea? I need to make a few calls. Han Zio had a plan slowly forming in his head. Buzz. The leader's computer received a call. When he saw the notification, his pupils suddenly contracted. It was Zero. Why is he calling me? The leader was shocked and shouted at his assistant, Track his location now. Han Zio's face appeared on the screen, and the leader showed a murderous intent in his eyes. Han Zio also did not talk, and they stared at each other for a while. Even though they were looking through a screen, they could feel the intense hostility from each other. After a while, Han Zio started the conversation. Long time no see. Isn't it too late for you to beg for mercy? The leader replied coolly. He could tell that Han Zio already knew that he was trapped in the encirclement and could not find a way to escape. That was why Han Zio directly called his mortal enemy to try some petty trick. From his understanding, there was nothing for them to talk about. The leader was the one in a better position, and Han Zio was just a stray dog that he could catch whenever he wanted. Do you still remember our little secret when I said I will destroy your organization? Han Zio asked in a slow, clear voice. You were so arrogant, and I was never in your eyes. And now, I've single-handedly pushed your organization to the brink of destruction, and you can't ignore me anymore. Now, you spend all your energy and resources trying to kill me. Don't you regret it? Why don't you try to persuade me with your little fancy ideology? Then, maybe, I will listen you and turn myself in. The leader took a deep breath as what Han Zhao had said stabbed right at his heart. The only thing that the leader wanted to do was punch Han Zhao right in the face. The Germinal organization's ideology was to overthrow the Six Nations, and the leader's ultimate enemies were the regime and the country. Yet, all his ambition had been burned down by a mere traitor. The leader could not let go of this crying shame. Save your breath. I know you can tell the situation you are in, and now you've decided to call and try some petty tricks, right? Do you think you can stop me with only those few troops? The leader laughed in his heart. Han Zhao did realize that he was being surrounded. So, he believed that Han Zhao was just trying to act tough. With the power of predicting the future, you have been fooling us, but this time, your power won't save you anymore. The leader snorted. When you have nowhere to run, I wonder if you will smile like you are now. The leader noticed the assistant on the side, hinting that the communication channel was secure, so there was no way to locate the precise location. If that was the case, there was no need to waste time talking to Han Zhao. Just as the leader decided to hang up the call, Han Zhao suddenly said, "So, why do you only send your men to kill me? Are you too scared to face me in person?" The leader shivered and showed a wry smile. "You don't want to live anymore, do you? Still arrogant, aren't you?" Han Zhao laughed. "Well, you only look powerful on the surface, but deep down in your heart, you are a coward, and you will never face me by yourself. Want to fight with me? Huh? You'll die before you get a chance to see my face again." The leader snorted and hung up the call. "I didn't get anything useful." Han Zhao turned off the tablet computer and let out a sigh. Other than trying to scout the intention of the leader, he also communicated with the Six Nations escort team. The good news was that the backup from the Six Nation had arrived on the east side of the plains. They had infiltrated the defense line of the Germinal organization without being detected. They would arrive at the encirclement by the next day to provide combat support for Han Zhao. Han Zhao suddenly regained confidence and scheduled a time to meet up. With the reinforcements as the ace up his sleeve, the operation became much safer. "We will start the operation tomorrow afternoon. But we cannot bring your sister along with us. We won't have the energy and awareness to protect her safety. If we can hide her in the encirclement, we can fight without worrying about Aurora," Han Zhao said. Surprisingly, Hila agreed. "Sister, am I to stay here?" Aurora looked up and her big eyes looking at Hila. "We are only leaving you for a moment. This is safer for you." Even though it hurt Hila to leave Aurora alone, she knew that this was the only way to keep her safe. Aurora looked down and covered her eyes. "I'll do what you say. I'm sorry." Hila felt a needle pierce through her heart, and she pulled Aurora into her hug. After searching for a while, they found a natural cave. Han Zhao dug out the dirt to create a bigger space and fortified the structure. Then he covered the cave with camouflaged material and closed off the entrance to the cave, leaving 80% of the food and resources with Aurora. "The food we left you should last you for around 5 days. Try save as much as possible. If you hear any troops from the Germinal organization, do not make any sound," Han Zhao said. Aurora nodded quietly. She curled up and buried her face in her knees as she looked at the back of Han Zhao and Hila. "Sister, I'll be waiting." Hila stopped for a second, took a deep breath, and started walking forward again. Han Zhao finished covering up the cave and noted the location. He let Hila drive as he sat in the back and cleaned the car tail, making sure that the Germinal organization could not follow the track to where Aurora was hiding. Hila looked at Han Zhao and asked, "Do you believe that we will pull through?" Han Zhao nodded. "I would never use my life to bet on something that I am not confident about." Hila stayed quiet for a while. Then she replied, "If I die in the battle, please help me take care of my sister. With your strength, the chances of you surviving are much larger than mine. If you talk more in this tone, I think you will see death right around the corner," Han Zhao said with his dead eyes, which he had not shown in a while. Even though Han Zhao teased her, he understood Hila's feelings. For Hila, every step that she took was lurking with danger. She was not as strong as Han Zhao, and the future was uncertain. Her sister was the sole reason that she had the perseverance to go through all the hardship, and she cared for Aurora with all her heart. She was even willing to sacrifice her life for Aurora, and that was why she had started to develop a pessimistic view on her own destiny. But Hila's statement also showed her complete trust toward Han Zhao, and this was the original objective that Han Zhao had before he intervened in this event. "I contacted the Six Nations reinforcements. They are already nearby, and we decided on a place to meet up tomorrow. If we fail the breach tomorrow, we will still get back up, but if everything goes well, we can probably get out of here before we meet up with the reinforcements." "I hope so." Hila glanced at Han Zhao and never spoke again. An hour later, the vehicle stopped on an obscured hill. There's still around 10 hours until we meet up with the reinforcements. You will wear this suit in the battle tomorrow. In these 10 hours, you must master all the controls and weapons on the suit. Hila was stunned. What about you? In order to get through the encirclement, we must create chaos. I will go and blow up their vehicles and ammunition. They will be prepared for my ability to change appearance, but I also have an invisibility power. What Han Zhao said was naturally Dion's character card, which he had used once in the headquarters. Hila understood. So, I will use the mechanical suit to act like it was you and attract the attention of the enemy because you are the target they want to kill. Han Zhao nodded. It was a brand new feeling after she wore the mechanical suit. Through the display, she observed the outside world as if she had stepped through the door of the new world. Hila tried to move around in the armor, but she soon felt the dense weight of the armor. She listened to Han Zhao and tried to learn the confusing controls of the suit. What a complex design. Did you make all this? Hila had a slight surprised tone in her voice. What, did you think the suit fell from the sky? Han Zhao replied. On the east side of the encirclement, a large number of vehicles stood by and slowly marched forward as soldiers stood outside the cars, scrutinizing every movement on the plains. Devon was the executive officer for this troop. He was not a senior executive officer, but he has spur powers that strengthened his muscles. During combat, his bones would surface and cover his body. His whole body would grow and become 2.5 meters tall with skeleton armor, greatly boosting both his strength and endurance. Even though this spur ability was powerful and threatening, the enemy was the notorious Black Phantom. Devon had no confidence in stopping him. I hope that guy doesn't try to breach on my side. I will never be able to stop him, Devon prayed in his heart. Suddenly, the scouting soldier shouted, their movement on the southeast side. A vehicle is approaching at a very high speed. The entire troop looked over, and they saw a jeep charging through the sand and dust. They quickly realized that the driver was wearing the dark black mechanical suit. Attention, an enemy has appeared. Why did they choose to break through here? Devon was nervous and kept on thinking about how unlucky he was. He even thought of running away. Han Zhao had already killed more than a dozen executive officers, and he did not want to be the next victim. Hila jumped up in the mechanical suit, activated the electromagnetic hover boots, and charged forward with an even higher speed. Hila was more agile in the new suit. She dodged all the bullets coming her way and sprayed her machine guns right at the enemy. Clashes, explosions, screams, and cries, the battlefield was in chaos. The battle became more intense. The situation was instantly reported back to the headquarters, and the battle was clearly shown right on the display. The leader jumped up after waiting desperately for intel. He finally showed up. The leader yelled, "Send the rapid response team as reinforcements. Tell everyone else to close up the encirclement with the east side being the center." The other troops received the command and started moving. On the east side of the plains, Hila kept on fighting with the suit on, creating a lot of destruction. In order to pretend to be Han Zhao, Hila did not use her spur power and only fought with the suit. She was not a mechanic, and Hila could not unleash the true power of the suit. The common soldiers could not stop her, so it was time for the executive officer to stand up. The sound of the cracking bone exploded as Devon started to expand. The bones spiked out and formed his skeleton armor, and he was as tall as a small giant. Devon suppressed his fear and anxiety as he swung his fist at Black Phantom. Their fists clashed and set off an explosive wave. Bang! Such power! Hila held her breath and barely stood still. She did not have enough strength or machinery affinity with the suit. With only the basic combat stats, she could barely hold back Devon's power. Devon was prepared to die, but he was surprised that he was still standing, and Black Phantom seemed to have suffered damage from his punch. Why is he so weak? Devon questioned in his mind. Devon carefully probed his opponent with feints at the start of the battle. However, ever fighting for a while, he found out that Black Phantom was not as overwhelmingly strong as he had been led to believe. The legendary Black Phantom is nothing much. I was worried for nothing. Devon got a confidence boost and started to attack without reserve. The battle between the muscular giant and the armored mechanical suit caused a constant sound of clashing fists to be heard. The other Germinal executives that followed behind Devon started to realize that Devon was actually starting to gain the upper hand in the fight, and they were all surprised. When did the captain become this strong? No, look, it's Black Phantom that grew weak. Even someone as strong as him can't fight in his peak state after escaping for so long. He is at his weakest right now. The group of executives were then also bolstered and were no longer afraid. Hila was fighting for her life, and she was losing ground every second. She could only clench her teeth as she received blow after blow from all directions. If she was using her usual fighting style, she never would have let her enemies gang up on her like this. If not for Viper's defensive capabilities, she would have long since bit the dust. The Germinal leader's eyes lit up. His condition is getting even worse. Now we definitely got him. The leader originally only wanted to use the 5 senior executives to stall Han Zhao. However, Han Zhao's strength was now deteriorating by the second. It must have been caused by the built-up pressure while escaping. Character summon card has been used. Current usage 2/2. The card will soon disappear. When Hila had all the Germinal forces' attention, Han Zhao sneaked into the midst of the troops and was busy planting explosives underneath every single Germinal vehicle. The ability gained from Dion's character card was extremely effective, and not a single soldier noticed what he was doing. It was as if he had disappeared off into thin air right in front of them. But Han Zhao was still being as careful as possible, as entering combat would immediately cancel the concealment effect. This is such a suitable Esper ability for thieves. No wonder Dion was able to steal classified information with ease. He probably even went to some good places with this ability. Damn, Han Zhao was a little envious. The feeling of being invisible reminded of an old film that he had watched. He remembered that it was called The Lord's Ring or something. This surrounding troops had a limited number of vehicles, and Han Zhao quickly finished planting all the explosives. He only left a few cars to be used for escaping later. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.